Hey, hello, welcome replay viewers. I appreciate you watching this scope. This is LorettaLoveHuff, the Dream Leader for Business. I help people and teams exceed their dreams. So I actually wanted to do a scope. I've been scoping now for a couple of weeks, a little infrequently, and now I'm committed to being online more often. And because I realized a lot of my Twitter followers may not know a lot about me, I thought this scope would actually be about my journey as an entrepreneur. So how did I get started? Where did I come from? Where am I going? So I appreciate any of the sharing that you do. So swipe up if you're on an Android and share the broadcast with your friends or followers. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box if you're a live viewer. So, many people are really surprised because I am a business coach and a speaker and an author. So I've written a couple of books. One is called Leadership Without Limits, Inspiring the Best in Yourself, Your People, and Your Organization. The other book is called Six Keys for Dissolving Disputes When Off With Their Heads Won't Work. And I created that book because I realized when I was in corporate America, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later, that I was really adept at helping people who were really frustrated with somebody else find the right words and the right tone and the right gestures to be able to communicate what they wanted without taking somebody's head off. I also have a book called Leadership Without Limits, Inspiring the Best in Yourself, Your People, and Your Organization. So hold on a second. I think I have a copy nearby. Let's see. Maybe, maybe not. Well, there's this one. Okay, we do. Okay, so here is the conflict book, Six Keys for Dissolving Disputes When Off With Their Heads Won't Work. So it's got specific tips and examples and models about how to get through conflicts, how to communicate them. And then this is the leadership book, Leadership Without Limits, Inspiring the Best in Yourself, Your People, and Your Organization. So they're both available on my website, emeraldharvest.com, or Amazon, but it's better if you order it directly from me. But anyway, that's not why I'm here, but that came up. So I started off, even though I'm a speaker and I actually make my living speaking and I get clients from speaking, I was really shy when I was a little girl. Like, I was so shy that when my mother had her girlfriends over to play cards, I could not walk into the room even though I knew them all and say, "Hello, ladies." I was too shy to do that. Mom put me in piano lessons for years. I went from kindergarten through high school. I took piano lessons every week. And so at one point I was actually pretty good about it, but now I haven't played so much, so it's really kind of a struggle remembering where all those keys are. But I remember being petrified when it was time for my first recital and I had to walk out on stage with people in the audience. I knew all those eyes were going to be looking at me. I almost lost it, behind the curtains backstage. But I knew if I didn't walk out on stage, my mother was going to have words for me on the way home. So I mustered up my courage and I went out and I played my little, 45-second song. And I survived the whole thing, but I was really, really shy. And even though later on I was still shy when I got to school, I was really popular at my elementary school because my dad owned the drugstore that was kitty corner across the street from the elementary school that I went to. So I got to eat all of the cheeseburgers I could because there was a fountain there with French fries and chocolate malts, and I could read all the comic books so long as I didn't bend the pages or tear them, and I could put them back in pristine selling condition. And Dad actually took really good care of us. He was an entrepreneur before they were even really using that word. It was like a business owner back then. So he owned that drugstore. He also owned a coin-operated laundromat. And he had a couple of kind of political jobs with Mayor Daley, keeping him elected and the mayor, the king of Chicago for quite a long time. But my mom, even though Dad did take really good care of us, was pretty adamant that I was going to go to college and that I probably was going to go get a graduate degree because she didn't want me to be dependent on my husband for my livelihood. So I was pretty obedient, so I did really well in school. I got into Howard University, got a scholarship to go there. Studied psychology because I was fascinated. So I was the only child. I meant to tell you about that. I was the only child, partly because I was adopted. So my mom told me I was adopted right before I was going to kindergarten. And at that point, I didn't really know what that meant. But I could tell she was a little bit uncomfortable about it. And then as I got to learn what that meant, I felt kind of self-conscious. So I went through a lot of struggles when I was a young child, kind of wondering, what happened to my other mom and why did she give me up? And, was there something wrong with me? So, a lot of that. So I'm not going to go into all that. But I actually did struggle a lot with, am I worthy? And I know people struggle with the am I worthy question for a variety of reasons. That was mine. So I was really shy, didn't quite, know how to relate to people, was very puzzled by people, as a matter of fact. And as I grew older, I actually started reading like astrology books, and I subscribed to Psychology Today magazine. That's actually what I studied when I went to Howard, was psychology, because I really wanted to understand people. They seem like a real mystery to me. So I went to Howard, graduated from there, came out and got a job. And my first job, and I knew when I got a degree in psychology that I wasn't going to be able to get anything really related to that, because you really kind of need a master's degree or a PhD, and I wasn't ready to go to grad school at that point. So I got a job at Sears, at their national headquarters on the west side of Chicago, where I'm from. And my first job was as a secretary, a clerical assistant. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't go to college for 4 years to do that. Nothing wrong with clerical assistants, but I had bigger aspirations. But that was the job that they offered me. So I did that for a while, then got into computer programming, which I actually kind of liked. So I've been fortunate over the years to do a lot of amazing things. I've been a assembler language computer programmer, a market research manager, a personnel manager, an executive, VP of HR. What else have I done? Programming, market research. And a banker. I was a commercial banker for a while. So I realized early in my career that I had to get over my shyness, because I knew, I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something inside me that I really wanted to get out into the world. And I knew that if my shyness kept my mouth shut, I don't know if you can relate to this, but my shyness was keeping me suppressed and unable to express myself, unable to even ask for what I wanted sometimes. And so I knew I was going to have to get over that. So we'd be sitting in a staff meeting. I don't know if you can relate to this. Sitting in a staff meeting. I think I'm kind of smart. So we'd be trying to solve some problem. I would have an idea, and I think, boy, that's a good idea, but I was too shy and a little bit too insecure to say anything about it. So I would sit there and I would rehash it, and I would work it over, and I would try to figure out what questions they might ask and how they might object to it. And by the time I had changed this idea to version 12.0, somebody who was a little more extroverted blurted out version 2.0, and everybody would say, oh, that's a great idea. And I thought, wait, I thought about that 10 minutes ago, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure about it. And so I learned that, people who are really more confident and outgoing tend to get a lot more attention, generally positive, but kind of depends on their own personality. So I knew I was going to have to get outside my comfort zone, and it was a struggle, but I was committed. So I took a lot of personal development courses. I read a lot. My aunt, get this, now back in the, I'm not going to date myself, but it was a long time ago, my aunt was a yoga instructor. She was a vegetarian before people were really talking about being vegetarians, and she was black and teaching yoga classes. So when I got into the workforce, I actually started studying yoga with her, which helped a lot, got me centered and confident and grounded. And actually created some kind of amazing experiences for me. So I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand kind of the full perspective of who LorettaLoveHuff is. So Loretta is a quant nerd who can program in a similar language, not anymore, but could back then, who could, when I was a banker, dissect a financial statement and tell you where a company's cash was going. And at the same time, I pray and meditate and hike and, love trees and hug trees. So I'm very much into nature and humanity and the universe and energy and neuroscience and a variety of things. So I have a very unique, different blend of skills. So analytical quant stuff and, sit on the floor and meditate with my eyes closed and breathe. So I bring all that to the consulting and coaching that I do. And so I can see things from a variety of perspectives. So when I went into corporate America, Sears was my first job. I was a programmer. I got into market research at Sears. I did employee attitude surveys or kind of culture surveys. I left there because I started going to grad school. So I went to the University of Chicago for grad school, studied finance. So psychology, finance. So I got an MBA in that, and I didn't really want to. I'd stayed at Sears for 9 years and had some, really great jobs there, but wanted to branch out and went into banking, which I thought would be a good combination of my, quant nerd brain and my, getting better personal skills. But I hated it. I don't know if you've ever had a job that you hated. I hated that job. And I thought, well, maybe it's because I've worked for 9 years and I've already had a lot of responsibility. And when I got to the bank, I had to start, kind of at the bottom. So it wasn't a teller. I was a business banker, but I was doing, I was writing up notes for the meetings that my boss and my boss's boss would go to at these client meetings. And then my boss would be editing it. And I think I write really well. So she's like redlining my stuff. And I'm thinking, you're not that smart. So I thought, well, maybe if I had her job, I would like it better. And I thought, well, no, not really. And then I thought, well, maybe if I had the guy in the corner office, if I had his job, I would like that better. Because he was, taking people to lunch and dinner and playing golf in the summertime. But I knew it was going to take a long time to get there, and I just didn't want to wait. Hello there, Afton. Hey, how you doing? Thanks so much. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for the hearts. Really love that. So I'm just telling the story of, how I got to where I am. So I'm in the middle of my, hey there, middle of my job at a banker, which I just hated. Thank you, Afton. I really appreciate you inviting those followers. Thanks so much. So, hey, welcome. Some other people have joined. Thank you, Zaisha. Thank you, Sean. Hey, MJ Love Coach. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate it. So I'm telling the story now about how I got to be from the corporate person that I was to where I am right now. So I was at Sears, went to Continental Bank. Hey, VA Julianne. Hey, welcome. Thank you. Went to Kraft, the food company. I was a recruiter there. Loved Kraft, loved recruiting. I got to meet a lot of really amazing people. Got recruited from Kraft to go to Apple. That was awesome. Loved Apple Computers. So I worked in their sales and marketing office in Chicago for about a year. It was a great company. Apple was actually my favorite company. So let me digress a little bit. So I have a Steve Jobs story. I was there during the years that Steve Jobs was not there. So John Scully was the president. They had, fired Steve, brought in this business owner not business owner, but business executive from PepsiCo. And so it was still a wild and crazy company, but it had, somebody sane and really analytical at the helm, but still wild and crazy. We would, wear Halloween costumes at Halloween, and we'd have a contest, and every Friday or every other Friday there'd be this big bash of free food and free liquor, and people would be driving home drunk. I mean, it was wild and crazy, but really lovely. So anyway, one day, years later, I'm walking down the street in Palo Alto, which is kind of the, hip city in the Silicon Valley. That's not San Francisco, it's down in the valley. And I was walking with my then husband past this wine store and squatted up against the outside wall with Steve Jobs, doing something on his phone. It wasn't an iPhone back then because we didn't have iPhones back then, but he was doing something. And I walked by and I said to my husband, wow, that was Steve Jobs. And we kept walking for another couple steps. And then I thought, wait, that was Steve Jobs. So I went back to him and I squatted down next to him and I said, Steve, you don't know me, but I worked at Apple for 7 years and I just wanted to say thank you. That was the best company that I've ever worked for, because I worked for several companies after that. And he said, wow, that's great. Where did you work? And I said, I was in HR. And he said, oh my God, those idiots. Do you want to come back? And I thought, no, thanks. Because at that point, I actually started my own company with my husband at the time. So we were doing financing for, it was kind of funny. So financing for small companies that weren't ready for the venture capitalist market that was out there in the Valley. So I thanked him because I really thought, I could, if I'd have said, yes, Steve, hire me back, I probably would have gone in, a much higher level job than what I had before, because he thought they were idiots, and he thought I was kind of courageous, I think, for walking over and just saying hello to him out of the blue, but it was Steve Jobs. Anyway, so I worked at Apple, I worked at Sega, I worked for DreamWorks. Steve sent me, right? So you got to hire me. So Apple was really my fun. I still have friends, from Apple, because we had such a really great time there. We hung out together and, did lots of wine drinking at the sports bar that was next door to one of the offices. It was owned by some of the 49ers, so every now and then we got to see some of the famous football players. It was really fun. Anyway, so I stayed in Silicon Valley for till when? 2003. But while I was there, I reconnected with my family. So for those of you who just joined recently, you didn't hear at the beginning that I was adopted when I was a baby. And my mother asked me, the one who raised me, my adoptive mom, the one I knew, asked me if I ever wanted to meet my parents. And I thought, well, I got parents. I don't really want to meet any more parents. I got my parents. But then, kind of early in my life, my dad died when I was in college. My mother died about 7 or 8 years later. And then my first marriage fell apart. So at that point, I was thinking, well, it might be nice to have some family. So I hired a private detective. I did research. This was before you could do a lot of things online. And it took me, when did I start looking? Actually, what they did, so I went back to the adoption agency because I found my papers when my mother died. I found my adoption papers. Richard J. Daly had actually signed it because he was the county court something or other when I was born. And they had the name of the adoption agency. So I went to the agency and I said, hey, you handled my case 30 years ago. I don't know if you still have any of the records, but I'd like to find my parents now. So they said, well, we have some information, so I'm going to go back. They said it's going to take us a couple of weeks. I think it was 6, actually. But we'll give you whatever information that we had. So 6 weeks later, she calls me and she says, hey, we've got some information. Why don't you come down and we'll share with you what we have. So I go down to the office and they give me like 4 pages of information. So they described my mother and father as having been college students at Howard University, which is where I went to school, kind of to the suggestion, I think, of my adoptive mother. So I think she might have known that's where they were. But I went to Howard. They studied psychology and sociology, exactly what I studied. And which shocked me. And then it described my mother as being 5'2" when she got pregnant, medium brown complexion, largely very intelligent, highly attractive due to her prominent smile. And I almost lost it. I'm like, oh my God, prominent smile? It sounded so much like me. So thank you all for the hearts. I really appreciate it. So I haven't told the story for a while. So I found, the adoption agency says, do you want to meet your parents? And I was like, I'd love to. I want my mother to know, because I just was wondering, like, what would it have been like for her to have to give up her baby? DNA is it is a phenomenal thing. I'll tell you some more about that too. DNA is incredible. So they wanted to know if I wanted to meet my parents. Yes, I do. So they sent a letter to Howard, and it took a while for them to write back. But then one day I'm at work, and the phone rings, and it's the social worker, and she says, your father has contacted us. Do you want to meet him? And I'm like, oh my God, yes. So she said, I'll give him your contact info. So, either later that day or the next day, he called me and he was giddy because he'd kind of known I'd been born, but he didn't know where I was. And so we're talking. He was living in California at the time. I was still in Chicago. He was in California. He tells me, he says, you should go to the library. This is back when they had microfiche. So you should go to the library because I was one of the most eligible bachelors in the Ebony magazine in 1964, I think it was. So I run over to the library that day and I have, I'm looking through all this microfiche and I actually found a picture of him. So I don't really look anything like him, but he was there and I was like, oh my God, my dad in Ebony magazine. So I went, this story could go on forever. I don't want to take everything, but it's kind of interesting. So we talked for a long time. I talked to my cousin, his sister's sons, talked to my sister. I planned a trip to go out to California where they were living for Thanksgiving. And every now and then my dad would call and he would sound kind of like weird and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then right before I got ready to get on the airplane to go out to meet everybody, my aunt calls and says, I got to tell you something. Your dad's got a drinking problem. And I thought, oh, that makes sense. That totally explains why he was calling me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and why he sounded the way he sounded, because I'd never been around anybody that had a drinking problem. So so I got out there, and I could talk about this for an hour, and I don't want to keep the scope going forever, but I met him. He actually did get, he had stopped drinking when, he found out about me, but then he got overexcited and started drinking again, so he actually spent the weekend in the hospital while I was out there. But I got to meet my other relatives and friends and family. And I stayed in touch with them for, quite a long time, still talk to them periodically. Dad's passed away, his sister's passed away, her husband's passed away, but I still got cousins, so I talk to them. So that was really good. He actually thought he knew somebody who knew where my mother was, but he didn't. But he gave me a picture of her. I should have it nearby. I don't know if I can find it fast enough, but I have this picture of my mom. Here, I'll show you this. So this is a picture of my mom and my dad in college. So you can't really quite tell, but this is my mom with her glasses on. I don't wear glasses anymore, but I used to. And my dad, and it's sitting right next to a picture of me and my now husband that I dated when I was in college, but didn't marry, and married two other guys, and now we've been married for 12 years. So that's actually what brought me to Phoenix, was reconnecting. That's a whole nother half an hour story, so I won't go there. But so back to the career. So I was in corporate America for a long time, worked at Apple, worked at Sega, worked at DreamWorks, started my own jewelry company. I started designing jewelry, so I didn't make these. Should have put on my own earrings. Another scope for sure. Yeah. So I was doing jewelry while I was working at Apple. I would go to work in the daytime, come home and make earrings at night, and go to the art and wine festivals on the weekend and sell jewelry. And one summer, it was actually pretty lucrative business. It sent me to Africa for almost a month. So I spent a week in Zanzibar, 2 weeks on a safari with like 12 other people, and then a week on a private tour out in the bush with my own driver and cook and chauffeur, who took me into places where I don't know how they found these places, because there were no roads to speak of, but it was amazing. So I've got pictures of, lions and animals and giraffes, and it was amazing. If you could ever go on a safari, it was amazing. So before they kill off everything, go on a safari. It was not like going to the zoo. It was quite amazing. So let's see. So I met my so I reconnected with my parents. So I was really committed. I really wanted to meet my mother, and I called the social agency that had hired and tried to find her. They had some records, and they lost my records. And then I kept calling every 6 months, or for years. I would call them. Have you found my records yet? No, they hadn't. But then one day the woman said, "You know what? I talked to a social worker. Seems to have found somebody who seems to be able to find people." So she gave me his number. I called him up. I told him my story, because I knew my mom's name, right? Because I found the adoption papers where she gave me up. Her name is Marjorie Jones. Ew, pretty common, right? So whenever I would ask anybody if they could help me find Marjorie Jones, everybody would say, "Oh, I don't think so." But I thought, when I was talking to him, I said, well, here's the, thanks for all the hearts. She was born around, I know she was in college in the early 50s, if I can date myself. And she was from Chicago, I'm pretty sure, and she's black, and so, I know Marjorie Jones is a really common name, but find me, 10 Marjorie Joneses that were living in Chicago back then, and, let's go for it. But nobody ever could, until I found this one guy, and he said, this is going to be a little bit harder, so it's going to cost you a little bit extra money, but it was like $450. So for $450, I'm like, yes, please find my family. So he said, it'll take me, about a week, but I'll call you back. So he called me back in a week, and he says, well, I found your mother's husband. Your mother did actually pass away. But he said, you've got an amazing family. I've talked to your brother. You've got a brother who's a doctor, a sister who's an attorney, another sister who's an airline flight attendant, another brother who's a sergeant with the Illinois State Police. I mean, it was amazing. So again, the story goes on forever. But I talked to my brother. He was ecstatic. He didn't really know about it, but my mother's sister did know about it. So let me tell you, so there's a story, if you want to read the whole thing, on about.com, Happy Reunion Story, or Happy Adoption Reunion Story. So if you go to about.com and search for Happy Reunion Story, you can read all the details of it. So, long story short, this guy finds my siblings. I go out to Chicago to meet them. I see my brother. He's stunning. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so glad I never ran into him when I was young, because I would have hit on him, right? He was cute. He was married to a woman who actually was pretty similar to me. Kind of interestingly, she's an optometrist. I had actually thought about going to grad school in optometry, but I decided not to. She looks like we got some of the same art on our wall. I mean, it was really bizarre. My stepdad brought a picture of my mother out. Maybe I can show you this. For, I think it's around her 50th birthday. I don't know if I can get to it. Hold on for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, so here, my mom. Here, Mom, does she look like me? Do I look like her? What is this? So, put another few pounds on me and leave my hair as gray as she's left hers. And gosh, same person. Amazing. So anyway, I think that's enough about the adoption story. But I'm still, talk to them, happy birthdays. And every time I go to Chicago, I hang out with them. My brother's now moved to Florida, so I can't see him quite as often as I did when I was, in Chicago and visiting them more often. But pretty amazing story. And so my one brother who was the state trooper, when they first heard about me, he's saying, oh, that's probably a scam. But I sent a picture of me to my brother, and he looked at the picture and thought, oh, there's no doubt. This is her. Because I look more like her than any of the rest of the kids. So, and I even, to whoever said that thing about DNA, people say I walk like her. I have the same gestures that she has, that I sound like her. Somebody else said something, I can't remember, but there are lots of similarities there. And so yes, DNA is quite amazing because it's just amazing. Anyway, so I think that's enough of the story. So we're still, in touch, brothers and sisters, and, they decided, right away they didn't want to call me the half sister. I'm just like the sister because even though I didn't grow up with them, we're all together. So I will tell you quite a short story about how did I get into business. As I said earlier, when I was, with husband number 2, we started a business together, but I didn't like the way that the business was going, so I started my own consulting company. And I was doing it primarily around HR consulting because a lot of my background had been in HR. And then I started doing executive coaching, so I went to coach training school in 1998. It was a long time ago before everybody was calling themselves a coach. And so I was coaching women who were in the Silicon Valley, who were trying to move up the corporate ladder or who had moved up the corporate ladder and were still, kind of struggling because people weren't giving them their props all the time. And then when, for this other half an hour story, when I reconnected with my now husband, I moved to Phoenix, and I still had some of those corporate coaching clients, but eventually, they would move on and go do all the things that we had talked about. And so I found myself here in Phoenix, which is not a big corporate town, and with networking with a lot of small business owners who, thank you for all the hearts, really. I really appreciate that. A lot of small business owners who didn't really need the executive level coaching that I was doing because they were dealing with, just themselves or maybe themselves and a spouse and maybe a couple of employees. And because I was new in town, I had to reestablish myself and go do a lot of marketing that I didn't really know how to do very much of. So I started studying marketing and then teaching it to a lot of the people that I was hanging around because they were struggling with marketing as well. So I'll be celebrating 16 years in business this next upcoming May, next month. So I'm going to have a Sweet 16 party to celebrate the 16 years that I've been in business. Yay, thank you very much. And I'm going to, I don't know, I have a caterer picked out. I have to go find a place. But so this journey has been one of, a lot of personal transformations, but a lot of, stepping out of my comfort zone, which is one of the things that I talk to people about because we get so safe and, it's nice in the comfort zone, but nothing really magical ever happens in there. So I still do a lot of executive coaching for people in not corporate America, so actually still some in corporate America, but also, entrepreneurs who have substantive teams, and a lot of marketing coaching for small business owners, particularly those in service-based businesses who kind of struggle with selling themselves. Because I struggled with that. When I started my consulting company, it was very different than the jewelry that I was making. So I would make jewelry, hang it up on the wall. People would say, oh my God, I love that. And they come, give me that so I could bag it up, and they'd give me money. And it was really simple. And it didn't mean anything if they didn't come into the booth or if they didn't buy anything when they came in. But when you're sitting talking with somebody about hiring you and your brain and your heart, and they don't, first of all, it's harder to talk about. For me, it was anyway. And other people that I talked to, it's hard to talk about yourself. People, I find a lot of people kind of suffer with valuing themselves, which actually I struggle with from time to time myself, because I'm always looking for, kind of the next edge or the next level. And so every time you get to that level, when you break through it, it's great. But then you got, God, there's more to go. So I'm always looking for how can I improve? How can I help my clients improve? How can we, all of us, continue pushing the envelope, as they used to say in the banking world, like pushing the envelope, pushing the edge of the comfort zone, stepping out of the comfort zone, because that's where all the magic happens. Self-perspective is, because you can't always see your own limitations, and even if you can see them, you might not have the resources or confidence or the knowledge of how to get past them. So it's a lot of, it's interesting. I've heard several times that the things that we teach are often the things that we need to learn ourselves. And, over the course of my life, I've been through, lots of stages of, that's right, you can't see your own nose. It is blind. It's right there, and you kind of know it's there, but you can't see it, and you can't really do very much about it. So it's helpful when, you've got somebody else looking at things, and I'm able to see things that other people can't. And that, people are able to see things about me that I can't. So it's, excuse me, I think always a good investment to have someone whose insights you trust to be able to give you feedback, to be able to, kind of lay out a path, which you can choose to select or not. But I think it's helpful to have somebody else there, whether it's a mastermind group or a coach that you've hired. I've just signed up for a coaching program with a woman I have been watching for a couple of years. And she's a really high-end coach with a really high-end program. So I didn't buy her really high-end program, but she had this like special deal that just happened today. And I'm like, oh my God. So I signed up for it, and I've just listened to like a couple of minutes because I've been really busy today. But I'm so looking forward to learning some of the things she does, because I love her style. I love her business acumen. I love her sales process. I love her tech skill. I love everything about her. So I'm really excited about this. So I think that's enough for today. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I've been trying to keep up with your, your comments, and I appreciate all the, the smiles and the laughter and the hearts and all that. So I think, yeah, you're very welcome for the story. I appreciate you listening to it, because I know it went on for a long time. I think there's another story about, I didn't even tell you about this, about how I got reunited with my husband, but that's another story. So I think where I'm going, like my next edge is growing the business. So it's, expanding it. I've rebranded a little bit today. I'll show you my new, you might have seen it before. If I can get the picture to show up. There you go. So Courageous Leadership, Outrageous Growth. So that's how I'm bucketing the work that I'm doing right now. And so it's, still allows me to do the marketing consulting that I do, and also the leadership coaching. So I think it's a great combination. So that's my theme. And, what I'm working on now is automating the business, doing more lead generation, so I don't have to work quite so hard to get it. And I'm also expanding, like bringing in coaches, so that I'm going to turn this into a well-oiled machine that doesn't have to have me in the middle of everything, because I'm way in the middle of too many things right now. And I think that's one of the ways to really grow a business is by getting the entrepreneur out of the middle of everything. So that's what I'll be working on over the next several months. And I'll probably be scoping about it as well. So in any event, thank you so much for all the sharing that happened, and the hearts that are going on. And feel free to connect with me on Twitter if you're not, although I'm sure that you're probably connected now. But you can reach me at emeraldharvest.com or LorettaLoveHuff.com. Either one will get to me. Thank you so much, Afton. Appreciate you being here, and I will talk with you guys later. Thank you. Have a great day and a great week. That's right. Stop working in your business and work on it. That's what I'm doing right now. Good advice. All right. Take care, everyone.